Right, so in this video, we're going to take a look at Visual Studio Community 2015. Which happens to be the latest version at the time. Most of what we say now will probably apply in future versions. It's completely free. If you haven't got it, either follow the link in the description or just Google Visual Studio Community and just download it. You don't need an account or anything. In this video, we're going to cover basically how to use it and how it can help you. With Visual Studio being an IDE, which is an integrated development environment, it's basically a platform for your development. It'll help you with all the features it's got bundled in, from actually the development stage and design stage through the coding stages, right down to actually compiling the program and releasing the finished product. Visual Studio's got it all built in, and I'll show you how to use those features now. So, one of the first windows you're going to see when you fire up Visual Studio is this little window here. It's got news in it and some videos. For the most part, we're not that interested in those. What we are interested in though is this little window on the left, which has got your recent projects in. Okay, so any project you've had open or you've opened recently will be in here. You can pin them if you want them to stay there and not ever disappear from the list. But what we're going to focus on today is the fact that we want a new project. So this will fire up the new project window. Okay. So from here you can pick whichever language you actually want to write it in or what you want to code in. So for us in all of our videos it's going to be Visual C#. From there you can then narrow it down, so this will actually filter this list on the left. So if we want to do a Windows application, it's been filtered more. And throughout our videos we'll mostly be concentrating on console applications and WPF applications. So console applications are like your command prompt, all command line based applications. WPF are more like the ones you'll be used to, which have got buttons and labels and graphical user interfaces. What I want you to do is I want you to click WPF because that'll give me the most stuff to show you on how to use Visual Studio. And the first thing I want you to do, I want you to give it a name. So let's call it, we'll call it VS Intro. So Visual Studio Intro. Okay, because it's good to give your projects and solutions a meaningful name. What Visual Studio is going to do for us, as one of its many tasks as an IDE, it will create a folder in this folder here called VS Intro, and that folder will contain everything to do with this project and the solutions. Okay, so we'll fire that up. It'll build this project for us and it'll set up the workspace for us. Right. So now it's finished loading. You've got your default workspace. And the first thing we're going to do, on the left, I want you to click Toolbox and we're going to pin the toolbox. So click the little pin there. Right. So that's given us pretty much everything we're going to use in the early stages of our programming. Right. So now that you've got that done, first thing I'm going to show you is the Solution Explorer on the right. So we're not going to use all of this, especially not at first. What I do know is references is something we'll use, and that's where we can basically add other DLLs and frameworks towards our applications to give them more features. A bit more complex, we'll learn about that in a few lessons. But the easiest stuff is this main window, which if you were to double click would open this design view. And if you open that up, the next file down is actually the code, which was already open in the background, for the application. So there's the design view, and there's the code in the background. Okay, so you can flick between them and then tabs at the top. Right. So, one thing I will show you, let's say I've accidentally closed a few of these windows. Okay, right, oh damn, I didn't mean to do that, I want them back. One of the easiest things you can do is click Window, then Reset Window Layout and click Yes. That will just set this back to as if you've never touched it before. Right. Another thing actually, which we will set up, because I know I've done it, but you won't have. If you click Tools and Options, scroll down to Text Editor and open it up. Then click C#, don't open it, click it. And I want you to tick line numbers, because by default they're not on, and later on when we're coding, that they're going to be massively helpful. Right. Okay, so we're going to open this toolbox up again, and we're going to pin it again. So this is pretty much what we'll be looking at a lot between this and the code view. These are pretty much where we're going to spend most of our time through these lessons. What we're going to do then, the toolbox basically will change depending on whether we're in code view or design view. In design view, it shows us all of our WPF controls. In the code view, it does something slightly different. So you don't have to do this, I'm just going to show you. Let's say this was a piece of code that I was typing a lot. So where I've put //code, which is just a comment, let's pretend it was 5 lines of code that I use relatively regularly. What I can do is highlight that code, drag and drop it in the toolbox, and now it's something I can just drop every single time I want it, wherever I want it. Okay? That's pretty much its main purpose within the code view for the toolbox, is to copy code that we can then reuse as often as we want. Okay? So I've shown you that, that's pretty easy. Obviously it's much more interesting in the design view, where you've got buttons, menus, lists, canvas, everything you want to drag and drop into this GUI. So, because I want to show you what the properties window usually contains, I would like you to drag a button from the left into the program. Okay, and we'll also get a label. There we go. So our program has now got a label and a button. Right. The properties window, depending on what you've got selected, will then fill with all of the properties for that particular object, that particular control. So if I was to select the button and I want to change where it says button, I would head over to the properties window and I would look for what I want to change, which in this case is the content of the button. So if I put, click me, okay, there you go. The content of that button has changed. Don't mistake that for name at the top, okay, so that changes, turn auto got clicked. That is the actual reference for this object. So if I had 4 labels, each one needs a different name. They can't all be called label. So it'd have to be like, label 1, 2, 3 or something more meaningful. Just so you can see where we use the name, I would like you to change label to label test, just so you know where to spot this later on. And we want to change the content of the label. Let's put old content. Okay. Once we finish this video, you can fire through these properties and change all sorts of stuff to the main window, the button, the label. Just chuck stuff in the program and just mess about with it. Have a play around, ready for the next lessons. Right, but for now that I've shown you the properties window for there, we're going to jump over to the events window. Alright, and if you double click an event, so these are all the possible events for this object, so whether the mouse is over it, leaving it, hovering over it, whether it's been clicked while there's a modifier on, that type of stuff, but we just want the click modifier. You just double click that little open box and that will build the event handler. So all of the code that goes here will be executed when that button's clicked. Right? So I wanted to show you why we needed to name that label. So right now we actually want to change the content of that label. So if we type label test, exactly the same case as it was before, okay, and press dot, a small window will appear. Yours will look slightly different to mine, and that's because I've got a plugin called Resharper installed, which adds a few extra features to Visual Studio. It's not free, it does cost, unless you have a .ac.uk or some form of school or college email to prove you're in education. And I believe if you're into open source development, there's a way to get it for free. If you can get it, it will help. If you can't, don't worry, it will not massively affect the lessons at all. It just, some stuff will look ever so slightly different, that's all. But no matter what, whether you've got it installed or not, this window will have appeared. Whether it looks different or not is a different matter. This window, this little drop-downy box thing, is called IntelliSense. So this basically, when you type something like label test dot, will give me all the properties for that label. If it was a class that I'd put up, it would give me all its methods, its variables. It basically, like if you've ever used Dreamweaver or anything like that, it kind of helps you along with your code, helps you get things right. So, label test.content is something we want to edit with a capital C. Earlier, we edited that and we put old content in it. We're going to put equals, open a quote, new content. And then put a semicolon at the end of all that to end the statement. I'm not going to go into this code massively because this isn't a programming lesson. This is a lesson about the IDE. As you can see, different color coding is something that this IDE does, Visual Studio. It'll color code certain classes, methods, string, everything. It'll give them some sort of color so you know just at a glance what certain things are. My colour scheme might be slightly different because I've configured things the way I like them, but you will get used to however you have yours configured. Right, so we have so far used the design view to add a button and a label. We've used the text box to do that. We've used the properties, which you get back to using this spanner, to set the content of the button and the content of the label, and we change the name of the label. On the button, we have also added an event, which is button_click, which if you look in your code, is right here, button_click. So when you click that button, it will run this event handler, which will do whatever's wrote in here, which at the moment will change the content of label test to new content, right? So you've seen a few different things so far. Another feature of an IDE is the debugger, so something that looks for problems and tries to help you solve them. So what we could do is make a mistake here. So let's spell label wrong. Label.test. That's not right. It's not something that exists. As you can see, like Microsoft Word and other programs, we've got a squiggly red line telling us there is a problem. Throughout your programming development, this will become invaluable to actually read what these little pop-ups say. Okay, don't dismiss them, read what they say. So just having a quick read, the name label does not exist in current context. In other words, it doesn't exist, we haven't made it, it doesn't have an instance. That's why it's got a problem, okay? So that's the debugger. That's helping us spot problems before we even try and compile our application, right? So I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want it there. And while we're here, I'm going to point something else out. See this yellow line here up the side? They've got a meaning. Okay, so we haven't changed anything up here, which is why there's no bar. If I was to, however, change, let's delete something out of here. The yellow bar appears. It tells us where there's been changes since we started this session. If I save my program, they will go green. So I now know that there was changes where they were and that they're saved. And everywhere else I do new changes, they'll go yellow. Okay? It's relatively straightforward, really helpful. When I close Visual Studio and open it back up again, this will be a fresh session, so there'll be lines nowhere until I start coding. Okay? Right. So we've looked at the design view, we've looked at the code view, we've looked at IntelliSense and the Toolbox and the properties window. Granted, very quickly, and I would like you to have a mess about and play around with them yourself. What we're going to look at now is something called the compiler. Okay, so when you press start up here, it's going to basically, this is going to take all our code and make the machine's version of it. Okay, something that can actually be run by the machine, the computer can actually deal with. Okay, so when we press start, it's going to build our application and then fire it up for us. So that's something that, you know, would be very, very extremely difficult for us to do, if not near impossible. But Visual Studio will do it completely for us, and there's our program. Okay, so it's running. We've got some memory diagnostic stuff over here telling us how much RAM we're using, how much of a processor we're using. If you're building a huge application, you'll want to put consideration to how much memory you're using and that type of stuff. So you don't want it to basically be a massive hog on RAM in someone's machine. We have got some code here, which in theory, when we click this button, will change the content of that label, which it has. Okay? So that was just a very, very quick introduction to Visual Studio as an IDE. If you can get hold of a copy of ReSharper for nothing, I don't expect you to buy it if you don't want it. It will help you, but as I say, it's not groundbreaking. It won't ruin these lessons. You can still continue through all these videos. I'll be hardly making a reference to it. It'll just, some windows will look ever so slightly different, but you'll still be able to do everything you need to do in these lessons. So that's a very basic look at this IDE I've shown you around. I would like you to go mess about with these, you know, play about with the layout of things, have a go with the brush up here, which will change the colour of things. Just have a play around, see what you can do. In the next few videos, we'll actually start building some programs. I look forward to seeing you there. Subscribe to the channel. I hope this helped.